On today's Locked On Guardians, we are going to talk about videos that are going viral and the heartblood of your Cleveland Guardians organization, the Major League Baseball Draft.
You are Locked On Guardians, your daily podcast on the Cleveland Guardians. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to a solo edition of Locked On Guardians. Locked On Guardians is as Justin would say if he's here, our favorite half hour of the day, the only daily podcast focused on your Cleveland Guardians. And we do that as a proud part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every single day. As I might have mentioned, my name is Jeff Ellis. I've been here for nearly 1,600 episodes, every episode of the show. I was one of the first people Locked On brought on. Before that, I was national writer at Scout and 24/7 focused on prospects in the draft. I want to thank you for making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is you get podcasts. And a big shout out to all of our everydayers. I just want to give shout outs to people who've been especially positive. People like John, Anthony, Zev. I think I got it wrong there. Sorry, man. But just a lot of Brian. There's no one, so many positive people. We enjoy that in the comments. It is a frustrating time of year when your team is eliminated. So we just want to take that moment and say thank you to everyone who add some extra positivity. And I want to say that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. On today's show, I'm going to dive into the José viral video. People have been asking. I'm going to give my opinion because that's why you're here on the show. I assume to hear us talk. We're going to talk a little bit about the MLB draft. It's the lifeblood of this organization. They have not gotten much out of Latin America, let's be honest. They do not have a great track record in free agency. It's trades in the draft. That is where they have to build. So we're going to talk about why a lot of places actually have them in the wrong spot, explaining where they're going to be, their history at the two potential draft spots. And then I've got 4 names to know. I might do like a partial mock. We'll see where we are on time, but you will get to know 4 names to watch in segment 3. But first, let's talk about José. So a lot of questions and comments about this. For those who missed it, there's a video, and this is kind of the first thing to know about this. This is a video from March, okay? So it is a 7-month-old video at this point in time that back in March did not get much run. That's the interesting thing that's popping up now. Because weirdly enough, the end of this season is the most negative fans have been all year. It is what it is. But in this video, it's an hour-long video, there's a lot of talk in it. But it's mostly getting clipped down to clips to try to make it sound like José is extremely unhappy that the Guardians lied to him or didn't do things correctly. And a lot of the translations I've seen are incorrect translations as well. So that also makes it more difficult, or people who just ran it through a translation software. I actually took it to someone who speaks Spanish. I'm not going to say it's all roses and puppies. There's definitely, some feelings of frustration in there. But I think he also talked about, the level of success they have had here in spite of what's gone on. And in grand scheme, I think it's much ado about nothing. And the reason I say that, it's not to discount comments and feelings. I mean, I am sure when March hit, seeing, 2 guys you play with a long time, Josh Naylor and Andres Jimenez get traded was probably tough. I think the tougher one was honestly Miles Straw. Him and Straw were buddies for a long time. I'm sure he wasn't probably very happy with Straw's treatment if we look big picture, really. Spending a year down in the minors, everything that happened with Straw, he's probably very happy for Straw to be playing. And Toronto is Cleveland North. Let's be real honest. Guys like Nathan Lukes and Ernie Clement there. So, they've built kind of with a lot of Cleveland's castoffs. But the reason I don't think it is something that concerns me or something that I'm spending that much time on outside of this, because I'm, I feel like, I'm tired of typing responses. People have asked us to talk about it. Let's just talk about it. Is that gap, right? Like by the end of September, everything we heard was this is a team that was galvanized. People who were in the clubhouse saying it's one of the closest knit groups that they have been around. They found their level, right? They found their grouping, and all reports were José was in a great place at the end of the year. That he was coming off another fantastic season. The team made the postseason yet again, 3rd time in 4 years, and the overall feeling seemed to be very positive. So I think you're going to take what you were hearing a month ago as opposed to an article from 7 months ago. Again, do I think everything's perfect? No. I mean, It just isn't. There's no way around it. I'm sure there is a degree of frustration. I'll say this: the other narrative is Jose signed that contract, and they've cut payroll since then. Well, when Jose signed his extension was 2022. That was when their nadir, I think I used that word correctly, of salary. It was like 40 million and 60 million those next 2 years. The last 2 years have been 100 million. They've actually increased payroll quite a bit since he signed that extension. That's not, now, was the overall down? Yeah, the overall was down post-COVID with the lost money and post John Sherman leaving and that money in a trust or escrow. That's what it was. So payroll, I would like it to be somewhat higher. Don't get me wrong. You also have to find the right players to give that money to, if it's going to be just a little higher and not a lot higher. But that's a thing for another day. Justin and I will get into some of our favorite targets, some favorite trade ideas. I think that's something for another discussion. Right now, though, what is my 1 to 10 worry scale with Jose? It's a 1. With 10 being worried. I think he still wants to stay here. I think he wants another extension. I think he is going to probably get that. I think you take the recent over something far in the past. Related to this, I'm just going to talk in. If you missed it, Terry Pluto had a really interesting column about, are the Guardians failing Jose? And I think it's worth pointing out, as he very well pointed out in his, that no, the team that's failed a superstar is Mike Trout with the Angels, who have, again, had the equivalent of Jimmy Haslam as their owner, someone who interferes and signs big name talent, and it has not worked out. Mike Trout has had one postseason run in his entire career. And at the other side of it, Jose has made as many ALCSs as Aaron Judge has made. So, yeah, there's just a lot to it. And again, it feels like either there's no in-between ground. Either you're going to sit here and listen to me here and be like, yeah, I agree with you, or you're going to call me terrible names in the comments. It's one way or the other, and people have strong feelings on it. And I'm not going to sit here and try to convince you beyond explaining my point of view. I figure if you're coming here to get, or listen to what we're saying, because Justin and I have spent a lot of time covering these teams. We have connections inside the team. We have talked to people, that have worked for, currently work for the team. So that's just kind of, my takeaway. Again, I understand everyone has different points of view, and I appreciate everyone who comments below. Let me know what you think. Am I underestimating the situation? I think it'd be hard to overestimate with how low I put my worry at, but let me know your thoughts. I'm very kind of curious to see overall feelings. It's the second time we've seen a viral-esque video. I would say Stephen Kwan's a few years ago was the other one, and that ended up being, again, not really a big deal in the end. People are going to use information, data, stuff, always just to prove their own point. Let's be real honest about that. If someone could have clipped it to make it sound positive, it would have been clipped for the group who's very pro-org to make it sound super positive. And if they could have clipped it for negativity, which was done, we saw that. That's how it works with all of these. It's a fractured fan base. Let's be real honest. It is a very fractured fan base. I guess the other note would be to talk about the ad in the paper. And I'll just say this, there's a plan in place to sell the team. It's got to be if Blitzer decides he wants to do that. And to do that, he's going to have to sell off probably ownership and other things to make that final decision. So it's interesting that people are making a big rah-rah point, in my opinion, for the ad, just because there is an ownership sellout plan. There is a plan to sell this team. I'll be very curious to see if we when and if we get more information on that. That's one of those things I'm still waiting to hear a bit more. Ever since the whole kind of first announcement, we really haven't heard much from Blitzer and his group. We're going to come back, be done with kind of the hot take part of it, be done with the early goings of some of the things people have asked me to talk about. We're going to get in the draft. Let's talk some draft history. Let's talk where they are picking. Let's talk about how some of the websites currently aren't right and why they aren't right about where Cleveland will pick in this year's MLB draft. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. And I really stress that. You don't want to miss this one. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 on bonus bets. If you win, that's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you unlock $300 of bonus bets across the app. We've had points with it off at 100, 150. We've gotten into 200s. We have never seen 300. This is the high water mark ever. I've been reading these ads for years now, 6th year at the network. We've been at FanDuel for, I believe, 3 of them. I've never seen this much from FanDuel. So if you've been on the fence, if you've been debating it, if you've ever been curious, you want to win it. So I guess maybe go pick the spread against the Browns. That seems like a pretty safe bet right now. And make that. And then you get $300 in bonus bets to use however you see fit. That's fantastic. That is something to check out for sure. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. I want to thank you for joining us again, making today's episode your first listen today and every day, wherever it is that you get podcasts. Let's get into it. So I love Tankathon. I'm just going to be honest. I think it's a very useful site for a lot of reasons. But back when Cleveland won the first overall pick, they had not yet instituted or moved in the whole thing where teams can't pick, the new regulations. They now have that, like Colorado, Washington, and the Angels. None of them can pick higher than 10, 11, and 12. Those picks are already locked in. Right now it has Cleveland at 22. I believe that is incorrect because what I looked at with the data last year was the fact that you take all those teams, small market teams that did not spend above the luxury tax, pick before the teams that did. San Diego and Boston both spent above the luxury tax. So those two teams automatically pick two spots, would be the last two spots in this grouping. So that leaves Cincinnati and Cleveland. Cincinnati had the worst record, so they would get the first spot. Now, on top of that, here's kind of the wiggle, however this goes of it. New York has the 17th overall pick. The odds of them moving up, not particularly great, but I also feel like the Twins, didn't they move up from around here last year, or the Mariners? We saw some teams really jump up high in the MLB draft in recent years. If the Mets were to pull into the top 6, I believe they're golden. They don't drop, they don't fall, there's no issues. They are in the top 6. For them, unfortunately, only Houston is behind them. So, they can't there's not a lot of backwards movement. But if Houston jumped up, then all of a sudden the Mets would be 18th. And then they would fall 10 spots back. So that's the thing. If the Mets move up, then Cleveland would pick 20th. If you're curious, Cleveland has picked 20th once. It was CC Sabathia. That worked out pretty well. Highest WAR ever is Mussina, then Sabathia, Torii Hunter, Bob Welch, and Rick Rhodes. I got to be honest with, from 1971. Rick Rhoden. I am not super familiar with. Some of our older fans, let me know what I missed there. But I mean, the 6th guy, Denard Span, 7, Adam Kennedy, 8, Greg Jeffries, 9, Tyler Anderson, 10, Eric Milton. But I think he'll get passed by George Kirby pretty soon. So that's at the 20th pick. Now, if things play out like we expect, and the Mets, because they spent so far above the luxury tax, will have to fall 10 spots, which is what will happen to the Dodgers and Yankees again this year, then Cleveland will pick 19th. Cleveland has never picked 19th. It'll be a new spot for them because when the draft was first instituted back in, was it 65? Okay, so 65 to about 95, Cleveland was mostly terrible. They had some points in the 60s where they weren't, but the 70s and 80s were awful. They weren't picking in the teens very often. This is an organization that, until they had their good runs, were picking top 10 pretty much every year. For some of the fans my age or younger who may not remember as much, the 80s were, I was still a kid for most of them. I mean, my middle school years were when this team found success. So if they're picking 19th, they've never picked there. And it's not surprising because they just hadn't been middle of the pack a lot. They were terrible or they were good. Best pick over, Roger Clemens dominates, 139 WAR. Bobby Grich, who I have heard about, another older player. And then this one, and that's a big fall off to Alex Rios. And that was definitely a player I'm like, oh, I remember him. Then Mike Scioscia, Shannon Stewart's 5th, 6, Michael Waka, 7, James Loney. That surprised me a bit. 8, Andrew Kashner, 9, Shelby Miller. Is that really 6? And 10, Brian Bohannon. So it kind of falls apart. Pete Crow Armstrong has a chance to get in there for sure. He's sitting 12th right now. So they haven't been the most productive. I did love Carson Benj 2 years ago, who was taken with that selection. With the first round pick in 2024 and 2025. At 19, you had Ike Irish and then Andrew Fisher with 20th in 25 to the Brewers, who I did like that. I like both those selections. It was Benj and then Trey Yasevich, who has had a really good second half. Those have both been fun picks. So some recent positive history with those two picks. In terms of what Cleveland could end up selecting with. It is interesting, though, that with those two selections, they have picked in those spots a grand total of once in, since 1965. So quick math, 35 plus 25, that's 60 years, right? So 60 years they've picked in those two spots once. And those are spots that have always existed. Like, you can make a case with some of the later spots. Well, there was less teams. That was more of a second round pick. Maybe that wouldn't show up when you're looking at just first rounders. But yeah, Cleveland just has not had many opportunities. And even in recent years, it feels like they're either further into the 20s or they are, higher up in the low teens. We haven't had that kind of middle ground. But in recent years, Travis Pastrana was the first time they ever picked first overall. The Chase DeLauder pick, which I can't remember exactly off the top of my head which pick that was. I think it was maybe 16th, was the first time they'd ever picked there. So they're getting some spots where they've never selected before, again, because this team was either, a complete, total, and utter embarrassment for a long time, or were solid, was just a good organization. Kind of surprised the Shapiro years. There wasn't some more in the middle type of years, but they were either, it feels like they either make the playoffs, barely miss the playoffs, or are well out of it. In terms of where I see this overall draft shaping up, I want to kind of tackle this a little bit before we get into segment 3, maybe, try to get some other fan bases interested. The way I see it, do some early mock data in here. Rock Chalosky, top guy. He was the top player for me in his high school class who got to college. So I have him 1 to the White Sox. I'm not getting my sleepers with every pick. Eventually, I will post this as an article that'll be free for everyone to read. Twins, Grady Emerson. They like prep guys. Pirates, Jacob Lombard. They've liked prep guys, and that's good Bloodlines family. Baltimore went with some short kings a year ago, so Drew Burress from Georgia Tech makes sense. The Athletics have liked to go with athletes up the middle. Justin LeBron out of Alabama. The Braves have gone with a lot of pitchers, but I'm giving them Tyler Bell, who was a high pick out of high school. I think maybe a second rounder to the Rays, who did not sign, went to school and has played well at Kentucky. He'll be a draft eligible sophomore. Speaking of the Rays, they picked 7th with AJ Garcia, outfielder of Virginia. Jackson Flora, right-handed pitcher, UC Santa Barbara, I should say. A guy kind of reminds me of who they drafted a year ago, but a righty version, explosive stuff over performance. Miami Marlins, Ace Reese. They went all college a year ago, went for power. That is Reese, the outfielder from Mississippi State. Rockies were a hard spot, gave him Sawyer Stronstrider, outfielder from TCU, athletic guy. Tools, who knows what the Rockies are going to do. New front office. That'll probably change once we have more information. Washington Nationals, new GM president. His history has been college guys. Cameron Flukie from Coastal Carolina stood out. The Angels like fast-moving, polished players. Derek Curiel, the outfielder from LSU. Arizona has been kind of all over the place, but has had success with up-the-middle prep players. Tyler Spangler, shortstop, De La Salle High School. Texas Rangers, athletes, Kevin Roberts, outfielder, right-handed pitcher from Jackson Prep High School in Mississippi. San Francisco Giants, Chris Hakopian, third baseman, Texas A&M, used to play at Maryland. Just because last year they maybe went with a little more power, and they've gone for some power bats recently. Can I get all the way up to the pick before I then spend the last entire segment on Cleveland Guardians names? Kansas City Royals, Gio Rios, left-hand pitcher. Major Stoneman, Douglas High School in Florida, top prep pitcher by many in the class. Just a lot of college-heavy teams in front of them. Houston Astros go for power with Bo Peterson, third baseman from Mill Valley High School in Kansas. Cincinnati Reds, Carson Bowman, left-handed pitcher, Southside Christian Schools, South Carolina. Another team that is a prep-heavy, pitcher-heavy organization the past few years. And that does now get us up to Cleveland. So I've got some names. I know I said a right-handed bat, but then I did more digging, and I was thinking no, but I'm going to talk about him. So we've got a right-handed power hitter, left-handed college power hitter, prep arm, and a prep hitter I guess I will sit down and discuss 4 targets, 4 players to know for the Cleveland Guardians in next year's, technically, MLB draft. It is looks on paper like a better class than a year ago. So sit tight, stay tuned to get to know 4 names, 2 of them power hitters, that Cleveland could target in this year's MLB draft. Most people can't name all of their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. You don't have the full picture. You could end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or phone. Monarch Money is built for people with busy lives. If you're putting off organizing your finances, Monarch Money is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting. You link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I pay for so many streaming services. Having kids, it's one of those things where you get one for one show, one for another show, and it just mounts up, and you realize you're paying as much as you used to pay for cable, right? That's the thing we all talk about. And in busyness, day job, this job, kids, coaching, it's there's so many things going on. It's nice to have one place to go to get that information, to see and make sure there isn't that thing you forgot to cancel that you were still paying for monthly. Use the code LOCKDOWNMLB at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com with code LOCKEDONMLB. Again, big thank you to everyone for joining us, taking and time out of your day, spending that time with us here on the show. Just a big thank you. I appreciate all of you out there. Before I get too much further, I do want to say go check out MLB Game Night. I know Justin uses it all the time. I use it as well. The great thing about MLB Game Night is it's quick fire information. It's kind of like how SportsCenter used to be back in the day when I was a kid, or actually the one I was able to get was CNN SI. Did anyone else watch that one? Do you remember that? Like that was on part of basic cable for whatever reason. But you get the rapid fire, find out what's going on with all the teams, and you get that local expert who actually knows what they're talking about, as opposed to the guy who's writing a write-up for a team that he never pays attention to most of the time. I think that's always one of those underrated facets about the Locked On Network is it's the local people who live and die with these teams. It's not someone who is, just there to cover it because it's the job. Just Be Locked On is not a job. It's something you do because you love it. It's something where, it's just in your blood to cover baseball. And that's part of why, big thank you to all of you out there. I had someone recently talk about how we have this platform and, this or that and the other thing, and I should use the platform better. I'm like, we have this platform because we built it. Like Locked On provided it for us, but we have built this from, 100 downloads a day to, 4,000 to 5,000 people downloading, watching, all of that. So thank you to all of you who are part of this trip or journey. Appreciate that. So let's talk four specific names. I'm treating it like they have the 19 overall pick. I'm treating it like off the board. Were all the players I mentioned in the last segment, as well as the Mets having fallen down. So let's start with the first player, the guy who I had here in my initial mock. And then I looked at, I got to be honest, I looked at the Cape Cod data and went, nope, off the list, because we know they put an incredible amount of value in the Cape Cod data. They didn't go for the Cape Cod All-Stars like a year ago, but they're also not going to go for a player who underperformed in the Cape Cod. It's still very important to play well at that level. And the player I originally had here was kind of looking at, I gotta be very honest, what am I looking at for them? Recent data and performance, looking for guys. They've definitely started to target. It's okay if you swing and miss, but you can't chase, right? Like guys who go look at this will get me in trouble. Look at Valera and his Savant page, where it is, his K rate and his whiff rate are both not great, but the walk and the chase rate are both really good. And this is where I get myself in trouble. The godfather, the star of that profile is Kyle Schwarber, if we're being honest, because I know we're gonna want Schwarber, and I get it. And personally, in an ideal world that doesn't exist and will never happen, I would love if they could do something like 2 years, $60 million for him. I know that's never going to happen, but that is kind of the guy whose profile they're trying to find. Right. They were willing to go up a little more chase, though, with last year's picks with Lavalette and with Schubart. But overall, that seems to be the approach. And the power hitter, now that I've buried the lead enough here, was Carson Tinney, the catcher who transferred to Texas this year after being at Notre Dame the last 2 years. One of the better home run hitters, right-handed bat, 6'3", 220, a good solid defender behind the plate. I don't know if he's more than average. Good enough arm. I don't have framing data on him because I don't think anyone has that too well on college guys, but like good receiving skills, nice arm, all that, all the positives. High level of production, though. Notre Dame is not always facing the best schedule in the ACC. Well, I mean, the ACC, what am I saying, is the second best conference. So that's baloney on my end. So I apologize for that. I don't know why I would think that, because I tend to think about Notre Dame as an independent. But in baseball, they're playing in the second strongest conference in college baseball. You had a really good year. But the problem is then you go to the All-Star League. You go to the best of the best, and they put a wood bat in your hands. And I used to, when I first started writing about the draft, I'd be like, pshaw about the Cape Cod. It's a small sample size. Who cares? But there are some guys who just don't hit well with wood. That's one of those. Will Craig, third baseman, Wake Forest was kind of the guy where I was very high on him, and I kind of learned my lesson. But he hit 165 in the Cape with 267 on base, a 367 slugging, and a 40% strikeout rate in 79 at bats, 28 games. That's about as bad as it gets. So Cooper Tinney, I was like, okay, kind of fits the new profile. He's got a, does a lot of things well, plays a premium position. I don't think they're willing to abandon the Cape that much. Let's talk about a guy who performed well on the Cape, and that is Caden Bogenpohl. Now, they also haven't really gone with as many small school guys outside of maybe like recently with Gavin with those early picks. Because Gavin Williams was from ECU, but that's a one that's recently had a lot of production. Caden Bogenpohl, he just shows how weird baseball was in 2024, where he had 20 home runs. 2025, he only had 13. Played well in the Cape, 267, 476, 533 slug this past year. Played well at Missouri State. You hope for more home runs, though. He's a 6'6" behemoth. He's a good athlete. He's definitely the guy who in this class, when you squint, resembles. Sorry, just distracted myself with a fun fact I'll give you in a second here. I just got to confirm that because that's really weird. But he gives you the Jay Slavolette vibes. Like if you're looking for the athlete who's better than you expect, who has some power, has some swing and miss, all of that stuff. That's Caden Bogenpohl. And just, okay, I can confirm it now. Something I hadn't caught first time through is Bogenpohl and Carson Tinney have the same birthday. They're both April 6, 2005. So that's just kind of a random thing. But yeah, this is another Jackson High School in most is in Missouri, not Mississippi, which has had, a few players come out of in the past. I believe nope, that was the wrong player that came out of there, but still. He's Missouri State. That's where Jake Berger was from. Trying to think of the shortstop I really liked a few years ago. They've had their ups and downs through the years. It's definitely a mid-major. But when you look at the 27 games, 91 at-bats, and actually his stat line, gosh, I am sorry, everyone. His stat line in the Cape was 242, 395, 385. He did not hit for as much power in the Cape. That is the concern. And the concern is the swing it needs work. It's long. There's some Nolan Jones to this profile, both good and bad. I know people out there saying there is no good, it's all bad. But if you want a 6'6" guy with some power who maybe you can help clean up the swing, small school guy, I don't know if he's a first rounder. I got to be honest. But when I was looking for someone who kind of fits, a guy who doesn't expand the zone, who's got a good eye for the zone, who is that player who doesn't chase and can walk, but also has big time exit velocities, it's Bogenpohl. So he's a sleeper to watch in the class. Like if I was going to list a sleeper, that would be the player there. There's a lot of work to the game. Maybe he's closer to a Schubart than a Lavalette, but just trying to find those power hitters like they targeted in last year's draft and even in the last few drafts. I mean, Rafi Velasquez was power over hit in his draft year as well. Let's talk the high school hitter that everyone's going to dislike me mentioning, bringing up, or talking about because it's an up-the-middle player who's hit over power, and that's James Clark from St. Bosco High School in California. They love California kids. Let's be honest about that. That is one of their targeted states in terms of prep players. St. John Bosco knocked off that great Corona team last year who had all the players that we talked about throughout the draft process, had multiple players in the top 11 picks. Excellent squad. And James Clark is an elite athlete. He is a no-doubt shortstop to me. Runs really well, makes contact. It's a clean swing, a little bit of exit velo, nothing where you're going to project him for power, though. I believe he's only about 6'1". He's not the biggest kid. But you're looking at a guy who's relatively young for the class, just having turned 18 relatively recently. An excellent athlete, a California player, incredibly smart. He's going to Princeton with his twin brother, Miles. We've seen a lot more twins, I feel like, in baseball of late, or maybe it's just something I'm paying more attention to. But, there's not a whole lot of holes in his game. Smart kid, just kind of fits some of their past stuff, but I can already hear the people screaming, no. And let's go with the player that I actually ended up putting in that spot, and that's Logan Schmidt, the left-handed pitcher, another California kid from Ganesh High School, reclassifier, so he's going to be 17 until June. He has big spin on his breaking ball. He has up to 97 with his fastball. He is working on that change. He has at least the beginnings of 3 pitches. He has good athleticism at the position. just a lot of things you look at for a positive skill set. And he is a player that in some mocks has gone as high as 10. The reason that I have all of these prep arms sliding a bit is because a lot of teams picking high are teams that have been more conservative. You can go back and listen to the first part of the show where I kind of discussed like very quickly, why I had certain players going to certain spots. Like I said, more in depth will come later, but we've seen prep pitchers slide on draft day. They're a huge risk, but we've also seen Cleveland have some success, right? Like they actually haven't had success yet, but we've seen, positive development with Doughty, positive with Oki, hoping that some of these guys like Zibin will get healthy and we can see more from, but they're also not afraid to spend on the prep players. I went, all of the prep pitchers they took in 24, the Sullivan on top of Oki, on top of Doughty. They do Bresnahan the year before that, who was MLB's Giants pitcher of the year, by the way, was a player they took in 23. So they've had some success with some of these prep talent, and they've gone out of their way to add lefties. So adding an athletic lefty, listen, I am not ever a fan of taking prep pitching because of the risk, but the Guardians and I disagree on that. They've gone with some prep pitchers high without an ideal college hitter, which, who knows, could change. And without, Liam Peterson would probably be the right-hand pitcher from Florida. It'd be the college pitcher I would consider there as just kind of one more, bonus fifth, who's had some up and down performance that has really great stuff. But if you're going for a lefty, you're going for maybe a high ceiling guy, I think it's Logan Schmidt at this point. So thank you all for watching. Remember to rate and review, download daily. It helps. Comment below. That's just a simple thing you can do to help the algorithm like us a bit more. And again, I just want to give a big thank you to everyone out there who adds some positivity, some niceness in the comments. The beautiful thing about growth of a show like this is we get to meet so many more people. The downside is not everyone's nice. So thank you to everyone who is joining us on this ride. We'll continue to be with you every single day, attacking all parts of the Guardians, the majors, the minors, the draft. We will be talking about trade targets and free agency soon as well. Thank you again for joining us, spending your valuable time, and go Guardians, go.